It is finally the moment you've all been waiting for. What is probably the most popular series on my channel right now has been my series on what if there was more than 3 starter Pokemon in every generation. You guys have loved these videos and I appreciate your support so much, and now it is finally time to take a look at what the final evolutions of all of these additional starter Pokemon that we have created in these videos would look like. If you haven't seen the other videos in this series to this point, I highly recommend checking them out to get the full refresher, but I will be providing a brief summary on each of these Pokemon so you guys can get the overall gist. With that being said though, let's just go ahead and get right into it. I am so glad that we have gotten to evolve these Fakemon starters, but the truth is, that wouldn't have happened without the support in part of today's wonderful sponsor, Manscaped. I use Manscaped products every day because they're great, and today they have got a brand new one for you, the Ultra Smooth Package. This package includes everything you need to be able to get the smoothest shave possible. And if I must say, the design is exquisite. First, you've got the razor, which is very sleek, low profile, it comes in this nice case, and frankly, you can just feel the quality when you hold it. Additionally, this package keeps you stocked up with 5 replacement blades as well, and then it also comes with the crop exfoliator and the crop gel to help you prep and execute your shave. The gel is also cool because it's clear, so you can actually see where you're shaving. On top of this awesome package though, Manscaped have also got their Boxers 2.0, which come in 6 colors, are anti-chafing, tagless, and are extra breathable with their jewel pouch design. Basically, Manscaped can help you to look and feel your freshest in all areas. So to hop on these products today, use the link in the description below and use code HoopsVGM at checkout to get 20% off plus free shipping. So again, check that out with the link below, and a big thank you to Manscaped for supporting the channel. Okay, so for our 4th Kanto starter, we obviously have the Electric-type snake Pokemon, Snellow. Now I went with Electric-type because it's kind of like the honorary starter type in Kanto, and all of the starters are based on different reptiles, so that's why I went with the snake. And in our last video in this series, we saw Snellow evolve into its middle evolution, Snevolt. Well, now it is time for it to evolve into its final evolution, and that final evolution is Snelectro. Snelectro is the climactic final evolution of this family of Pokemon, and it attempts to fit in with all of the other final evolutions of the Kanto starters just as well as it possibly can. I decided to make it a pure electric type in order to even out the mono-type starters and the dual-type starters, since as of right now, Blastoise is the only one of the 3 that has a mono-type, so I felt like giving Snelectro a mono-type as well was only right for balancing purposes. Its name also comes from its pre-evolutions names as well, Snellow and Snevolt, and then adds the suffix electro, which basically just denotes something that contains electricity. Is Snelectro something that you would use as your own starter Pokemon if it was actually present in a real Kanto game? Be sure to let me know down in the comments below as we move on to the Johto region. Now, of all of the first stage starter Pokemon that I've created for these videos, I think the one from Johto is probably my favorite, and that would be the adorable woolly rhinoceros Pokemon, Wintereye. Now, in the last video when we went over the middle evolutions, I introduced the middle evolution of Wintereye, but talked about how I wasn't really able to come up with a name that I liked well enough to assign it to this Pokemon, and I asked you guys for your help on what you think would be a good name. Well, Nicholas Mayfield commented on that video and suggested the name Crino, which I did like, but I decided to tweak it just a little bit and go with the name Crinoceros for the middle evolution of this Pokemon. So a huge shout out goes to Nicholas for helping me to come up with that name. Also, in that video, I mentioned the name Snowwoolly as a potential name, and while I didn't really like it for a middle evolution, I think it's a really cute sounding name that goes perfectly with the first stage, so I feel like I want to change Winterized name to Snowwoolly, cause frankly, I just like it a lot better. But of course, we have already seen Snowwoolly and Crinoceros, and we are here for their final evolutions. So I would like you guys to meet Crionodon. Crionodon is the pure Ice-type final evolution of the Snowwoolly family, and it is also a monotype as well, because all of the Johto starters are monotyped, and so it only makes sense for an additional starter to be monotyped as well. That might not be quite as fun in the type department, but in the design department, I feel like this guy came together really, really well. I really like the look of this guy. I think it definitely does little Snowwoolly justice, and overall, this is something that I would absolutely pick myself. And if you guys would, you're gonna have to let me know down in the comments as well. The name Crionodon I also really like too, and I didn't have nearly as much trouble coming up with it this time around, because it comes from the same place that its pre-evolution Crinoceros' name comes from, which is cryo, meaning something that is really cold, and then it also comes from rhinoceros and Dawn, which is a word that is used to describe someone who is the boss of something, as Crionodon is as the final evolution of this line. And since I didn't really explain Crinoceros' name as well, yeah, that's what it comes from. Cryo meaning cold, and rhinoceros because these Pokemon are a group of woolly rhinoceroses. Before we get too far into the video, I also need to give a shout out to my main man, Oscar Belmonte, as well, because he is the artist who has helped me to create the artwork for all of these final evolutions that you are seeing in this video. So be sure to check him out with the links below if you haven't yet, because he obviously does great work. Why don't we go ahead and get into the Hoenn region starter Pokemon though, and as a refresher, that would be the bug-type Spetot. It evolved into the also bug-type Pupot, and that Pokemon is evolving into the also bug-type Spyalot. Now, I gotta be honest with you guys, Spyalot is really, really interesting, because first and foremost, it is based on the 22-spot Ladybug. Its first stage is based on a larva, the second stage is based on a pupa, and then finally, Spyalot itself is based on the actual Ladybug when it is fully grown. And when it came to creating a final evolution for this Pokemon, the only thing I really knew definitively is that I wanted it to be a pure bug type, because once again, there is only one Hoenn starter that is monotyped, and that is Sceptile. It is outclassed by the other two that are dual typed, and so I wanted to create another monotyped starter Pokemon here to balance out that dynamic. The other thing about the Hoenn starters is that they don't really have a super concrete theme with their designs like some of the more recent starters do, so there was really nothing to go on that way in terms of what we could use as a basis of inspiration for this Pokemon. It basically just needed to look cool and look like it fit in. So that is basically what we attempted to do here, but obviously we want it to have some inspiration and not just be some kind of random Ladybug Pokemon. And the inspiration here actually ended up being perfect, but it was inspired by the design itself rather than the inspiration inspiring the design. Because as I just mentioned, we kind of randomly landed on the design that Spyalot now has. However, I knew that I wanted that design to be purposeful at the same time, and as I analyzed what we had come up with, I had a revelation. The main theme of these Pokemon to this point has been the fact that they are based on the 22-spot Ladybug, and the theme of spots has been prevalent through each stage of this line. You hear it in their names, Spetot, Pupot, and now Spyalot. So I knew that we already had one theme in spots, and then something occurred to me. What if we made the theme of spots a double mean and made this Pokemon into a spy? Because the word spot means a marking of some kind, but it also means to spot something with your eyes, like spies are known to do. And this Pokemon, with its largely black coloration and kind of sleek body style, honestly already looked perfect for a spy kind of theme. So even though this wasn't the intent when we created the design, I feel like this theme actually works perfect with this Pokemon. And it works even more perfectly when you consider that spies often use bugs, which is a term that is used for the secret listening devices that spies will plant in rooms in order to gain intel on the people that they are spying on. So this Pokemon may have came together completely backwards, but in my opinion, it also came together completely perfectly, which just goes to show there are so many different ways cool Pokemon designs can come together. And finally, there is this Pokemon's name. The name Spyalot came together just about as randomly as every other facet of this Pokemon, but it also came together just as perfectly, if I do say so myself. Because of the names Spetot and Pupot of its pre-evolutions, I knew that I really wanted to try and keep the word spot within this Pokemon's name, and I was able to do that at the end. I also added in the word spy because this Pokemon is taking on a spy theme, and then I added in the word yellow in the middle there because this Pokemon is predominantly yellow and is based on the 22-spot Ladybug, which is notable for being yellow itself. And when you put all of these different words together in this way, it ends up being pronounced as Spyalot, which sounds a lot like the phrase spy a lot, which is exactly what this Pokemon would do as a spy Pokemon. So all in all, for as weird and as haphazard as this Pokemon came together, its theme and its creation and its design and its name honestly ended up becoming really, really cool and awesome and just works really seamlessly together in my opinion. So even if it was a bit of a weird experience, I am really proud of how this one turned out. Next, we come to the Sinnoh region though, and the starter Pokemon that we have created for this generation is Staticapra. Staticapra evolves into the also electric type Volgoat, and Volgoat evolves into the electric ghost type Revillithor. Now, Revillithor is one of my favorite of all of these final evolutions that you are going to see in this video, because it required some creativity, but that creativity ultimately resulted in something that I think is really, really unique and really, really cool. The way that it came together was that I knew I wanted this final evolution to be a dual type because all of the other Sinnoh starter final evolutions are dual typed as well. And when I thought about a dual type for this electric type Thor based Pokemon, and if you want the full background on these Pokemon's inspirations, I once again recommend checking out the previous videos. But when I thought about all of this, the natural conclusion I came to was the steel type, because obviously Thor is known for his legendary hammer, which obviously would be represented perfectly with the steel type. And a Thor-based Pokemon would also be represented perfectly by the electric steel type combination too. However, there was one problem with this, and that was that the water starter of this generation, Empoleon, is already using the steel type itself. So that was out of the question, and I was forced to come up with something different. So I did a bit of research, and when I looked at the actual inspiration of these Pokemon, which are Thor's goats that carried around his chariot within the tales of Norse mythology, I came across an interesting trait. Within Norse mythology, it is said that Thor would actually eat these goats in order to provide him sustenance. However, he was also able to bring them back to life in order for them to continue pulling his chariot. And when I discovered that Thor would constantly kill his goats and then bring them back to life, my mind immediately went to the ghost type, and the thought of an electric ghost type final evolution for these Pokemon just sounded absolutely beyond phenomenally cool. And the fact that it also has a legitimate inspiration with it as well just makes it even more cool. And the reason why I love this in particular so much is because it does have that little bit of uniqueness to it. You don't necessarily expect a goat-based Pokemon to also be a ghost type. So it has a bit of intrigue, in my opinion, when it comes to what this Pokemon ultimately looks like and how it turns out. It's not the kind of thing you were expecting, but it has all the reason in the world for being so, and that is a kind of combination that I believe makes for a special Pokemon. The name Revillithor is also really cool too, because it comes from the word revive, referring to the reviving of these goats, and then after that, it derives its name from the word defibrillator, which is a device that uses electrical currents in order to basically shock people back to life who could be near death, which honestly goes perfect with the themes of this Pokemon. And then finally, at the end of the name, you obviously have the word Thor, which comes from Thor himself, and also just gives the name that strong kind of feeling that a Pokemon like this needs to have. I would absolutely pick Staticapra if it was available as a real starter Pokemon in order to get Revillithor. This would easily be one of my favorite starters of all time if it was real, and I don't just say that because I created it, I just really like the way it turned out. So you guys are going to have to let me know what you think about this Pokemon in the comments too. Now we gotta move on to Unova though, and the starter that we created for the Unova region was the adorable armadillo Pokemon Armador. It evolved into the also rock-type Dillador, and Dillador evolves into the rock-steel-type Mezzador. Now, these family of Pokemon, just as a quick refresher, are following the Unova starter Pokemon's theme of being based on different cultures of the world. Therefore, the Armador family is based on South and Central American culture, particularly that of the Aztecs and the Maya. You can clearly see this in the final evolution Mezzador's design, as its shell has finally grown into something that resembles one of the iconic Aztec and Maya pyramids, while also not being too far out of line in terms of it also being an armadillo, so I think this came together pretty well. And due to its theme of armor as an armadillo Pokemon, this is where the steel type also comes in too. And furthermore, that's kind of where the rock type comes in as well, and the rock type is in there because of balancing reasons with the other types. Once again, check out the other videos if you haven't to get the full explanation, but overall, I think Mezzador turned out really cool. Its name, meanwhile, is derived from the names of its pre-evolutions, Armador and Dillador, so it keeps that same door suffix, which partially comes from or as in rock, and then it also comes from the term Mezzo as in Mesoamerican, which are the types of people and cultures that this group of Pokemon is based on. Mezzador is definitely another one of my favorites from this group, but we still have a few more final evolutions to cover, so let's go ahead and move on to the Kalos region. The starter that we decided to give to the Kalos region was Sinnoh, and Sinnoh is a pure ice type who evolves into the ice fairy type Tendursa. And Tendursa, in its final stage, evolves into the also ice fairy type Bruinurse. Now, the theme that dominates all of these Pokemon, and especially comes to full fruition in Bruinurse's design, is a theme of a healer. It has a healer theme because all of the different Kalos starters are based on different RPG classes, and that is also what brings in the fairy type as well. Given the fact that the fairy type was also introduced in Gen 6, it would be a lot of fun for a starter Pokemon to feature that brand new type, and therefore this different mixing of elements, I believe, came together quite nicely. I've said it before in the previous videos as well, but the ice type also comes into play here as a part of the healer theme too, because a common remedy for a lot of different injuries is to simply put some ice on it, so that is why we have the ice type, and that is why these Pokemon are based around polar bears in particular. They're also based on bears in general because bears are seen in media as very caring, nurturing type of animals. If you have someone that's really caring and soft and gentle, you call them a big teddy bear, so it kinda just works. And something else that also kinda just works is Bruinerse's name. Bruinurse comes from a combination of Bruin, which means bear, Nurse, because it's obviously a healer-based Pokemon, and Ursa, which is the Latin word for bear. Not only do all of these words describe this Pokemon perfectly, but they also fit together phonetically absolutely seamlessly, which is a recipe for a great Pokemon name. There is one thing about the name that I do want to address though, and that is the fact that the term Bruin is typically used to refer to more so to brown bears in particular, as opposed to a polar bear. So I was a little bit hesitant when formulating this name on that. However, when you Google the term Bruin, it is defined as a bear, especially in children's fables. Now, not only does that kind of open it up to any bear in general, especially because we're dealing with a fantasy-based world like Pokemon, but it is also extremely fitting that this is a word that would be used in fables according to this definition, because this Pokemon is a fairy type. So once again, all of the different elements of this Pokemon just come together really seamlessly, and I really like the way it turned out. Now we're going to go ahead and get into the Alola region, and the Alola region from start to finish has one of my favorite lines of starter Pokemon that I have created for this entire series. It starts with the bug type Biddybug, evolves into the also bug type Gumbug, and then, in its final evolution, evolves into the bug flying type Galantula. Galantula has one of my favorite designs of any of the final evolutions in this video, and it actually might be my single most favorite. I love the way that this Pokemon looks and how it came together, but there are some things about it that I think I need to explain in a bit more specific detail. And the first of those I think I need to address is its name. You might have noticed that the name Galantula sounds very similar to the name of the Pokemon Galvantula. But I decided to give myself a pass with this because this name just works so well with what is going on with this Pokemon, and since this is a just for fun type of thing anyway, I decided to go ahead and use it. The name comes from Tarantula, which denotes this Pokemon as a spider, hence why it's a bug type, and also the word gallant, which is defined as brave or heroic. This theme of being brave and hero-like is the entire theme of what is going on with this Pokemon. It starts out as a little itty-bitty bug, but then steadily grows into a Pokemon that is known as a hero to other Pokemon. This theming came from the fact that I knew this Pokemon was going to be a bug flying type, because it is also inspired by aerial silks, the kind that you often see in circus performances, because the Alola starters as a whole have a circus-based theme within them, and this aerial silk inspiration ties this family of Pokemon in together with that in order for them to fit in with the Alola starters as much as possible. This is also why these Pokemon are spiders, because aerial silks are very reminiscent of spider webs, and if this Pokemon is going to be using its spider webs to be flying in the air as an aerial silk-based Pokemon that is also flying type, it naturally is probably going to bring something specific to your mind, and that is none other than Spider-Man. Now, I wouldn't say that Galvantula is based specifically on Spider-Man, because I'm not really a fan of basing Pokemon on other fictional characters, but it does evoke some of the themes of Spider-Man as a superhero-based Pokemon more in particular that is also a spider. It's basically using all of its different elements that come together to create something that is very Spider-Man-like as a reason to base it on the concept of a superhero in general. So it's basically a superhero-inspired Pokemon more than it is a Spider-Man-inspired Pokemon in particular. And because all of this comes together so well and is described so perfectly in the name Galvantula, not to mention it's also really easy to say and just rolls right off the tongue, is the reason why I decided to give myself a pass with it and use it anyway, even though it sounds extremely similar to the name Galvantula. If this was an actual real Pokemon, that might be a little too close for it to be passable, but since this is not a real Pokemon and it's just for fun, I think we can go ahead and use it. And with that being said, I think Galvantula makes for a really cool starter Pokemon concept. And now we're on to the Galar region with another one of my more favorite starter Pokemon lines, the Burbolt line. The Burbolt line starts, of course, with the electric type Burbolt, evolves into the electric flying type Boltalon, and then evolves once more into the also electric flying type Boltrive. Now, Boltrive is pretty cool in my opinion, because it fully embraces that video game theme that this line of Pokemon was going for, as a part of the larger Galar starter Pokemon theme of entertainment. I discussed that more specifically in the previous videos, but as the final evolution of this line, Boltrive fully embraces this video game aesthetic, and it does so with a neat little reference, as its design is partially inspired by Pulseman. Now, I know that I just barely said that I don't like to base Pokemon on other fictional characters, but this technically doesn't count because Pulseman is a Game Freak character, and obviously Pokemon is made by Game Freak too, so I feel like this is a neat little reference to Game Freak's history more than it is basing it on some other entirely different fictional character. This inspiration comes from the fact that not only is it a Game Freak character who is a video game developing company, but Pulseman is also a video game character himself and also has to do with electricity, which is the type of these Pokemon. So it kinda just all comes together really well, and I thought that referencing Game Freak in some way was the perfect way to represent this video game theme with these Pokemon. Boltrive's name also ties into this as well, as it comes from the term Bolt, which is a term that all members of this family of Pokemon use, as well as the term Drive, which not only comes from the Sega Mega Drive, which is the console that Pulseman was originally released on, but it also refers to electronic drives in general that you hear about very often and are very prevalent in PCs. Everything from USB drives to hard drives to solid-state drives, they're a very big thing when it comes to electronics and computers, and obviously computers have a lot to do with video games, both as a platform and as a means of developing them. So overall, I thought this worked really well as an inspiration for Boltrive's name, and I think Boltrive turned out pretty awesome, all things considered. And now we have finally arrived at the final evolution for the final starter Pokemon that we have created for the most recent generation in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. To go along with the Paldea starters, I created a little Ice-type starter known as Chilemi. It evolves into the Ice-type Lamedio, and Lamedio evolves into the Ice Fairy-type Rhodenold. As you might expect, Rhodenold is the final culmination of everything that is going on with this family of Pokemon. Or should I say it's the climax of this Pokemon family. The reason why I say that is because it has a theme of a theater performer. And the reason why it has this theater performer theme is because the theme of the Paldea starters is a theme of different kinds of performances. Whether you're talking about the magician in Meowscarada, the singer in Skeledirge, or the dancer in Quackwaval. So Rhodenold is an actor, specifically of the theater variety, and this is where it gets its fairy typing, because the fairy typing evokes themes of fairy tales, and many classic Shakespearean plays are often seen as a kind of fairy tale themselves. Rhodenold's name also evokes this theme of theater as well, as it comes from rodent since it is based on the Arctic lemming, which is where its ice type comes from, and then it comes from the term dénouement, and I really hope I pronounced that correctly, but basically that's a term in the theater scene that describes the final part of a play where everything kind of comes together and is resolved, which is basically what Rhodenold is doing as the final evolution of this family of Pokemon. And then, last but not least, the final part of its name also comes from the words old, also referring to it as the final evolution of this line, as well as the word cold, referring to it as an ice type. And I also just think that together, the name Rhodenold sounds like the name of a character in some kind of Shakespearean play. So once again, this is a name that I feel like is pretty solid for this Pokemon. And honestly, if this was an actual Paldea starter Pokemon, I feel like it would fit in pretty well, and I feel like it would be a very solid choice too, so you guys are going to have to let me know if you would pick Rhodenold for your Paldea adventure in the comments below, and you're also going to have to let me know which of these final evolutions is your favorite, and which of these starters, if you had to pick between all of them, now that you know their final evolutions, would you pick to go with? Once again, be sure to let me know in the comments, leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new, and once again, thank you guys so much for all the support on this series. It's always possible that we could continue it with Mega Evolutions or Gigantamax forms or something along those lines, so if those kinds of extra forms for these starters is something you would like to see, be sure to show this video some love and let me know down in the comments below so I know to make it. You can also further support the channel if you would like by checking out my Pokemon remixes on Spotify and other music streaming platforms. That is very much appreciated, and with that being said, I'll be back with another new video very soon. Until then, as always, thanks once again so much for watching this one. I really appreciate it, and I will smell you guys later.